Chapter 5. The Summons. Morning settled over the house like a second blanket, thin, frayed, letting the cold through. Thomas woke to the scratch of his mother's broom on the floorboards and the soft click of cups taken down from the shelf. The fire had been coaxed into a cautious glow. Steam curled from the kettle's spout as if afraid to spend itself. Mary moved quietly by the window, darning a heel with thread she had split in two to make it last. "Sleep?" his mother asked without turning. "A little." His voice came hoarse. He sat up on the straw tick, pushed hair from his eyes, and found the place in the room that would not look back at him. Mary tied off her stitch, bit the thread, and set the stocking flat. "Mrs. Keene sent broth," she said. "Says we're to take the pot back before dinner, or she'll lose it." "We'll carry it," their mother said. She poured tea, weak, the colour of river water, and set a cup by Thomas's place. "You'll go to the pump first, then to the yard for work if they'll have you." She paused, as if choosing the right hook for the next words. "There'll be something for you. Your father always said a man willing to take a hard job will not stay idle long." Mary's eyes flicked to Thomas and away. The thought of their father seemed to hover unspoken, as if his absence sat in the room with them. He had known the river better than most, and still the cholera took him before they could say more than his name. Now Edward was gone too, and Thomas felt the same hollow ache opening wider inside them both. Thomas wrapped both hands around the cup. The warmth went into the fingers, not the chest. "I'll go to the pump," he said. "You'll eat first," his mother said, and laid a heel of bread beside his cup. She reached over and flattened a curl behind Mary's ear with her thumb, an old habit, then set the kettle back on the hob and looked at the door as if the day would show itself in the jam. It did, at mid-morning, in the form of a knock that sounded like knuckles wrapped in leather. Mary went to lift the latch, then hesitated until their mother nodded. A man in a frock coat stood on the landing with a black tin in one hand and a book in the other. He did not remove his hat. "Thomas Crowther," he said. Thomas stood. "Aye." The man flipped his book open, licked his thumb. "Summons to East India House. Leadenhall Street. Committee of Shipping wishes your account of the loss of the Resolute. 10th hour tomorrow." He took a sealed paper from the tin and held it out. The seal bore the company's arms, pressed deep in red. "Do not be late. Wages cannot be reckoned until your deposition is taken." Thomas took the paper. The weight in his hand was more than wax and fibre. "I'll be there." The man looked past him into the room. One glance, practiced, that counted chairs, saw the stove, the women, the thinness of the bread. He set the hat back on his head. "Good day." When the stair fell quiet, Mary shut the door carefully and put her back to it, both hands on the latch as if someone might try to take it. "They couldn't wait," she said, and then pressed her lips together, the words folded and put away. His mother dried her palms on her apron. "We'll polish your boots," she said, and the decision settled things. "Your father went to Leadenhall once to see a clerk about a cargo that never paid. He said the floor there was so clean a man could see his face in it. Best show them a face worth seeing." She brought out the brush they kept wrapped in paper, the one his father had used on Sundays. She set a bowl of water by the chair. Mary fetched a rag, and the three of them worked in quiet. Brush and rag and water. The small, neat labour that made a thing look like itself again. That night, after they had eaten, and Mrs. Keene's pot washed and returned, his mother took down the Bible and read by the stove's glow. Not to him, not at him, simply aloud, the way she had done when they were children and afraid of thunder. "Yea, though I walk through the valley," she said, voice low, "thy rod and thy staff." She stopped, smiled at herself, and turned a page as if the next line might be better suited to a house where the river had a longer reach than the shepherd's crook. When the room went to sleep, Thomas lay with his eyes open to the dark and felt the seal under his pillow as if it had heat of its own. He put his hand flat on the straw to stop it from reaching where there was no chain. Leadenhall Street held itself as if the city were required to bow when it passed. East India House rose white against the morning, a classical front with pillars that looked like they were meant for a temple. The porter at the gate examined Thomas with an eye that measured boots and coat and face, and found him the length of a stray nail. He took the summons, cracked the seal, and nodded toward the inner door. Inside, the air had a different weight, the smell of sealing wax and wet wool and paper that had never seen dirt. Clerks moved in pairs, files under arms, eyes on nothing but the next door. Sandshakers sat beside inkwells on every desk. In one room, a globe turned slow beneath a young man's hand, as if the world could be set right by touch. "Crowther?" A thin fellow in a black coat appeared as if conjured. "This way." He led Thomas down a corridor lined with portraits to a chamber where 3 men sat at a long table. A 4th stood by the window with his back to the light. Thomas knew him even in silhouette. Captain Brown, thinner than he'd been at sea, the scar at his temple livid in the morning. The man at the centre of the table shuffled papers and looked up. His hair lay flat as if it had been pressed there. "Thomas Crowther," he said. "I am Mr. Alderton, Examiner of Marine Losses for the Committee of Shipping. To my right, Sir Edmund Rawdon, Director. Captain Brown needs no introduction." He glanced at the window. "Mr. Pierce, First Mate of the Resolute." Pierce turned from the glass. His eyes were pale and sharp. Thomas remembered the sound the man's truncheon made against the rail on nights when the watch sagged. "Be seated," Alderton said. He set a clean sheet on the board and dipped his pen. "We will begin with your account of the night in question. Speak plain. Dates, bells, what you saw." Thomas sat. The chair's edge bit the backs of his legs. He folded his hands to keep them still. The night was close. No moon. We struck. He swallowed. We struck something shortly after the second bell. The hull took it on the starboard bow. The shift went to the pumps. The boats were... Alderton's pen scratched. "You were below." "For part of it." The room swam a fraction and steadied. "I went below with the watch when the order came." "Why?" "To check lashings," Thomas said. The words had been laid out in his mouth the night before, cut to the shape of the room. Stores shifted with the first heel. "Your brother?" Alderton asked, without looking up. Thomas's throat closed around the word. Edward, he went with the first lot. He was ahead of me. When the lamp went, I lost him." He stared past Alderton's shoulder at the painting of a man in a powdered wig, looking down his nose at a horizon he had never sailed. "You lost him," Alderton repeated as ink dried. "Yes." "And did you see him again?" "No." The lie had no ornaments. It did not need them. "Did you," Alderton went on, voice steady, "at any point see your brother in chains?" Captain Brown shifted, but did not speak. Pierce's mouth moved in what might have been a smile, the upper lip pulling back just enough to show a tooth gone dark. Thomas's hands were cold. He felt each finger as if they belonged to someone else. "No," he said. Mr. Alderton allowed the pen to rest. He looked up for the first time, the gaze mild as a Sunday. "We have testimony," he said, "from men who served under you, that some of the boys were intercepted near a crate containing contraband, that a packet was found on the deck by your brother's feet, that the boatswain ordered him confined for theft. He set one page atop another, as if building a wall no man could walk through. What say you to that?" Thomas heard the click of the door latch best. It was a quiet, harmless sound. He saw the hold all over again, the water climbing the posts, Edward's mouth making shapes in the dark, his own fingers raw on iron. His voice came thin. I did not see that, he said. Pierce's pale eyes were steady. You were part of it, he said, without heat, as if stating the weather. You and those rats you run with. He's a poor liar, Mr. Alderton, but he is one Mr. Pierce, Rawdon said, a warning that sounded like indulgence. Let the man answer. Answer he has, Pierce said. Captain Brown put a hand on the window frame. We're not here to try a boy in front of his brother, he said. We are to know where the ship broke and why she went down, and whether she might have been saved. And we are to protect company property from theft, Rawdon added softly. Opium does not lift itself and walk off a deck. Alderton tapped the clean page with his pen to bring it back to order. Mr. Crowther, he said, patient as if speaking to a child. For the record, to your knowledge, did your brother attempt to steal from a company crate? Thomas's tongue felt thick. He heard his mother's voice reading by the stove, and Mary's thread knocking through a heel, and Edward's laugh, the real one, the one that belonged to a street and not to the hold. He found the rope of his voice and pulled. To my knowledge, he said. No. Alderton's eyelids lowered a fraction. He looked at Rawdon. Rawdon looked at Pierce. Pierce lifted one shoulder, a shrug that might mean anything. Alderton set the pen down and folded his hands. Very well, he said. Mr. Pierce, for the record, state your observation. Pierce came away from the window. The boys had wind of the cargo, he said. They've all had wind of it these last runs. There was a packet on the deck by the younger's foot. The lad was put in irons for it. The elder, he tipped his chin toward Thomas, was nearby, loud as any. When the ship struck, men like him were first to the boats. Thomas opened his mouth. Nothing useful lived there. The room blurred at the edges. We cannot hang a boy twice, Rawdon said, almost bored. The sea has done that. He leaned back and spread his hands. But we can set the record. The company's good name will not be mucked with the stink of common thievery. Alderton turned the page. Mr. Crowther, he said, and now the gentleness had gone from his voice. Your brother is dead. His name will be written one way or another. You can spare your mother the shame of whispers if you speak plain and let us close the book. Will you say for the record that your brother acted against the company, and that his death, while regrettable, was the fruit of his own misconduct? Silence balanced on a knife. Brown stared at the floor. Pierce's mouth kept its little shape. Somewhere down the corridor a clerk coughed, a dry bark like old paper. Thomas's hands had gone to fists without asking him. The nail of his thumb bit his palm until the skin gave. He tasted iron and knew he was biting his own cheek. He saw Edward's face when he was 5 and proud of new boots, and when he was 10 and scraped his knee so bad he swore he'd never run again and ran the next day anyway. He saw him at the rail the night the world turned, skinny, bright, trusting. He raised his head. For the record, he said, and every word cost. Edward Crowther was at fault. The breath shuddered in his chest. He brought shame on the company. The next sentence would not come. He forced it through. He deserved what came. The pen scratched. The sound was worse than the sea. Captain Brown's jaw worked as if grinding bone. He did not look at Thomas. Rawdon set his fingertips together and watched as a man might watch a trap spring in a field he did not tend. Mr. Alderton blew on the page, sanded it, shook the grains back into the shell. That will do, Alderton said. Sign here. Thomas took the pen. His name blurred and steadied, and blurred again. He made the letters the way his father had taught him, neat as he could manage. He dotted the I and crossed the T and did not let his hand shake until the ink was down. Rawdon slid a second paper toward him. Wages due less advances and fines for gear lost, he said. You will see you are in arrears. It happens. Report to the tally office day after next for assignment. An able man will not sit idle. He smiled without teeth. There's a berth on the Dauntless if you're quick. Alderton stood, which meant Thomas was dismissed. Captain Brown stayed where he was, staring at the glass. Mr. Pierce, passing close, let his shoulder brush Thomas's, as if by chance. Outside, the courtyard air felt too large for lungs. Thomas crossed to the gate before he realized he had not taken his hat. He didn't go back. He found a wall and braced his palm against it, and retched until nothing came up but the taste of ink. When the world held steady, he walked. Leadenhall's roar fell behind, the way surf falls when a man turns his back on it. Crossing Bishopsgate, he touched the place over his ribs, where a man keeps breath when he cannot keep anything else. He tried to find a shape for what he had said, and it slid away, leaving behind something raw and white. By the time he reached their lane, the light had thinned. He stood at the bottom of the stairs with his hand on the rail, listening. In the room above, his mother moved a cup from one place to another. Mary's voice, low, counted stitches. He climbed. At the door, he paused, the latch under his thumb. He could tell them the company would pay. He could tell them there was work. He could carry in the shape of himself like a man carries a coal that will not show how it burns. He pushed the door and went in. Mary looked up, hope quick as a match, then set it down before it could burn the room. "How was it?" she asked, steady because she knew no other way. Thomas took off his coat and hung it on the peg that had always been his father's. "They took the account," he said. "I am to sail again, day after next." His mother nodded. She smoothed the cloth by the cup, though it had no wrinkles to give. "Then we'll mend your shirts," she said, "and see to your sea chest." He opened his mouth and no confession came. The words he had spoken in the committee room set their weight on his tongue and would not move. "Good," Mary said, and bent to her needle, eyes sharp. "We'll have you eat first." He sat because there was the chair, and because there had always been the chair. In the pane of the window, the alley's lantern kindled as a boy in the court took a light from a twist of paper. It cast a blemish of gold on the opposite wall, and in that smear of light he saw a black mark, 2 strokes for wings, a beak like an arrow, another crow, another tally. He looked away before the shape could make anything in him move. He wrapped his hands around the cup his mother set down and felt the heat and told it where to go. Into the fingers, the wrists, the arms, back into the place behind the ribs where a man keeps breath. "I signed," he said at last, and his voice sounded to him like someone else's at the far end of a hall. "For the record." His mother touched the back of his hand, as if the word could be gentled by skin. "You did what you had to," she said. He nodded, because that too was a way to keep the house standing. In the alley, the lantern shifted, and the crow's wings seemed to lift and settle, a trick of flame. He did not look again. He drank his tea. He set the cup down without noise. He kept his face turned the way a face is meant to turn, in a house where work is the first and last word, and put the rest of himself where no one could see. That night, the house settled into silence. His mother's breathing grew slow in the corner bed. Mary's thread slipped at last from her fingers, and the needle clinked softly against the tin cup. Even the baby in Mrs. Keene's care across the hall had gone quiet. Thomas lay still, counting the boards creak as the fire died, until the air was filled with nothing but the weight of his own chest. Then, careful as if the straw might cry out, he slid from his tick and crossed to the narrow cupboard by the stair. Behind a loose board, wrapped in a rag dark with seawater stains, lay the thing he had carried from the wreck. Not food, nor coin, nor a keepsake of his brother. A lump of resin the size of a man's fist, hard as tar, reeking sweet and wrong even through the cloth. Opium. He held it in both hands a moment, as if weighing his own betrayal. The faces of Alderton and Pierce flickered in his head. His brother's face came last. He pushed it away. On the landing outside, lantern light leaked thin through the window pane. He took the resin, a scrap of pipe he had whittled from driftwood, and the tiny pouch of ash he had saved from an earlier burn. His feet found the steps without sound. In the alley, the air hung wet and sharp with coal smoke. He crouched by the wall where the lantern's glow didn't reach, struck a spark, and coaxed the pipe alive. The first pull burned the back of his throat, and the world leaned sideways, harsh, bright, forgiving. The crow daubed on the wall across from him caught the light. Its wings seemed to rise and shift with each flare of ember, as if it watched him. He closed his eyes and drew again, harder this time. When the pipe burned down, he set his head against the bricks, the taste of ash thick on his tongue, and let the dark take him.